Hello and welcome to Hey, Not the Face with your host, John Nash, and your producer, me, Steffi Haynes. And yes, you guys are getting 2 episodes in 1 week. And the reason for that is the judges have denied, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has denied Zuffa, the defendants in the antitrust lawsuit. They have denied the appeal. John, how the hell are you?
Oh, exhausted. Work is really busy right now. Really, really busy. So I imagine nothing happened in the courts involving Zuffa. I hope not, because I'm not prepared if there was.
Well, talk to me a little bit about this Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals denying the defendants. What exactly does that mean?
Well, this was kind of a surprise because usually they have up to like 90 days to review the request for an appeal. The Zuffa, after the Judge Boulware, and this case has been taking almost a decade now. It was filed in 2014, remember, December 16, 2014. In August, we've got the class certification was granted by the judge. So in other words, he said you are going to become an actual class action lawsuit. All the fighters that fought in the UFC during the period that fit the guidelines that they need to become a member, all 1,200 whatever fighters are now part of this, automatically in this class certification, and it can go ahead as a class action lawsuit. Now, Zuffa immediately appealed it. They filed the appeal, and usually the court has 90 days to give their order, their judgment on the appeal. In other words, are we going to pick up the appeal and look at it, review it, or are we going to deny it? So we were expecting this to come in like early December. The courts, the Ninth Circuit, their decision on this. Instead, it came out now. They're denying the appeal. They accepted the amicus brief written by the Chamber of Commerce on behalf of the defendants, in support of the defendants. They accepted that, but then denied the appeal. And what that means is the Ninth Circuit will not be taking up the appeal and reviewing the class certification ruling of the judge. Instead, the case moves forward. And so the next step is the UFC has asked for summary judgment. They filed a motion of summary judgment. And we will give them the dates. They had another thing that came out today, a bunch of dates of stuff that's going to happen. And you can tell the judge wants to move this forward because some of the dates that he had set further back because of the appeal, he's now moved them back to the original date earlier. So we'll get them out of the way quicker. So summary judgment is next. In other words, will the judge just grant Zuffa the win and say, hey, they don't have a case, the plaintiffs? If that and no one expects them to win that because the judge has already tipped his hand that basically he's not leaning towards the UFC, the Zuffa for summary judgment. If that doesn't happen, that means we go into trial, and the trial has already set a date, and the defendants have asked them to move that date because they're not available, and the judge denied the motion to move it. So it's going to happen start April 8th, 2024, barring some other, miracle or whatever, but that's the date it's going to start apparently. And so we will, after years of nothing happening, now it's just one thing after another.
All right, let's take a look at a few things here. First of all, I noticed that they misspelled Kung Lee's name. They refer to him here in this order. See order Chung Lee versus Zuffa. Will that matter?
No,
okay,
no, because whoever wrote this down, it's not the judge himself. Probably dictated it to someone, and they just don't know who Kung Lee is.
Gotcha. All right. Second question. It says here, it is therefore ordered that the response to the 878 motion for summary judgment is due on or before November 30th. Please tell me what response they're looking for.
The response would be from the plaintiffs. The defendants submitted this motion of summary judgment years ago. Mm-hmm. I can't even remember the exact date because everything's been so stretched out. But the judge put it on postponement hold while they went through some other stuff, right? And now he allowed them to resubmit the motion for summary judgment. They submitted theirs on I can't remember what date they did it, but the last day they could, just recently, a month ago, I think. And now the plaintiffs have a chance to respond, and their response is due November 30th, right?
Okay, and then the reply
And that's then the
due.
plaintiff, the defendants are given one more chance to reply on before December 22nd, right?
Okay.
And then, I can't remember the exact date, we'll have a decision on motion of summary judgment. But basically, when that's done, a month or so after that, a month or two, we'll go right into trial. And no one expects him, though, if you read the opinion in the class cert, how just scathing it is. You've listened to him in the hearings. No one is expecting summary judgment to be granted. So we expect that it's going to be denied, and we are going to move on to trial.
There is also a November 17th date here, and I really dig this one because this is in regards to that motion to reopen discovery. Can you explain that a little for those that might not have listened to our last show?
Yes, the defendants put a request in to reopen discovery for the Kong Lee versus Zuffa case. And the reason they said they needed to reopen discovery is because events since the end of that class period, since the end of 2017, show that that Zuffa did not have market power during the class period. Now, again, there's all likelihood. In fact, Boulware in the last hearing, there was a note I had on it. He tipped his hat on this because he said, I think he said specifically he's unlikely to grant it, or that he has no interest in reopening discovery because he thinks the case is dragged on long enough. And so it seems incredibly unlikely, but they still submitted the motion that he's going to grant this reopening discovery. The whole point of granting reopening discovery strikes me as kind of a last-ditch effort to kick the can down the road. Because to open it would delay the case probably 4 to 6 months to bring in the new evidence and look at it, right? The discovery. But he's not, he is adamant about getting that case on April 8th. And so again, I can't say for sure he's not going to grant it, but he's already tipped off that he's not going to grant it, kind of like he did with the class cert where he said before he's going to do it. So it's very, very, very unlikely that he grants that motion to reopen discovery.
Wow. This is great news for the fighters, honestly.
Yeah, for the plaintiffs, it's after a long, painful period, things are moving their direction. Now that doesn't mean that they have a victory. They still have a trial coming up. You would assume too that the UFC Zuffa, in this situation, most companies would be trying to get a settlement, but most companies probably would have been trying to get a settlement as soon as the judge made it clear he was going to grant class certification, right? So I'm not 100% certain UFC even try settling now, which seems crazy because the potential damages and impact of this case could be just massive on their company. But if they don't, it goes to trial, and then they're facing the possibility of treble damages. And then because they're going to have a jury, it's not going to be the judge that decides the damages. There'll be a jury. And, you speak to guys that do jury trials, you do not want a bunch of, normal people sitting on jury looking on one side, a bunch of super wealthy executives, and the other side, a bunch of beat up fighters that they think didn't get paid much.
Yep. Wow. I love this so much. Now, some stuff happened as well, though. We were made privy to a lot of payouts. Explain that to us.
Well, kind of hidden under with all this going on, kind of lost in the commotion. The last week or so, there have been a lot of filings for the order to motion of summary judgment, for the order to reopen the discovery, for all these motions are filing, and they've been resubmitting or submitting new exhibits as part of it. And these exhibits are not redacted. So some of the material that we've already seen has been resubmitted now. And because the judge doesn't want things redacted, even though we're going to go through and see how much of the old stuff's going to be unredacted, it's been submitted again, unredacted. And some of it's kind of surprising because there's material in there we just were not aware of. I mean, about fighter pay. There's an expert report where every purse that was paid out from 2011 through 2016 is listed in that exhibit. If you have them at home, some people download these from Pacer. It's the Blair expert report. In the appendix of it, there is section F. There is just a list of all the different purses every year. And they don't have the names attached, but it's not very difficult to figure out which fighter is which because there's descriptions basically on like what number of fight this was in the UFC they had. Like this fighter made $1 million, just throwing out a number, or this fighter made $1 million, I think $61,000 in their very first fight in 2016. It's not very hard to figure out that that's CM Punk, is it?
Right.
So we have that, just tons of information, plus other unredacted sections. We have, contract information from certain fighters, their actual contracts. We have descriptions of the negotiation process with Lyoto Machida. We have little excerpts that kind of detail the payouts to fighters, but it's a lot of details, and we've been going through it. Well, I'll have an article with Anton, and we're going to go through it. We're going to have a bunch of purses that we've figured out of a lot of the top stars.
I have a question. I seem to recall that the disclosed purse for CM Punk was something like $400,000. And everybody was really mad that there were all these guys on the card that had been there for years and weren't making anywhere close. So you're telling me that he actually made more.
Yeah. In fact, let me go down and I'll tell you.
I have a whole list. I have a whole list for you, but I'll start with
we'll do him first. But he made in 2016, there's a fighter that had his very first fight in the UFC. And that fighter made, when you combine their basic purse, their pay-per-views, their discretionary bonuses and side letters, all their types of bonuses, that fighter made $1,042,736.
Wow.
I'm very confident that was CM Punk, because I can't imagine another fighter that would fit the description to it that year.
Okay, so can I start with my wish list?
Yeah, so you can go through it. Let's name some
Ronda Rousey.
Okay, for Ronda Rousey, again, we had to do the same thing. You go by year, and you can kind of figure out what she made, which fighter fits her description based on the material we have. I should point out, too, we have her contract. Her last two fights were under a contract that was listed in the antitrust lawsuit. She got $3 million a fight for her last two fights, basic pay, when she was fighting in a title fight, a $500,000 when she wasn't. And then she got pay-per-view points from $200,000 to $400,000. She got $1. From $400,000 to $600,000. She got $2. From $600,000 to $800,000, $600,000 to $900,000, $3, and everything over $900,000, she got $4. So for Ronda Rousey, going back to her first fight against Liz Carmouche, we have her at, well, first I'm going to read you an excerpt really quick that came out, right? Kind of confirming what she made. And that is, this is from the Robert Topol report. Rousey was compensated $13 million to participate in 7 UFC bouts, of which she won 6. Now, so that $13 million, that what he's describing actually is her first 7 fights in the UFC. That does not include the Amanda Nunes fight, which we found that as well. So she made $13 million in her first 7. And so we have purses for, we go back in the line, we can look and see she made supposedly, according to this, trying to cross-reference against Sarah McMahon, she made $870,969. Against Davis, she made $1,063,000. Against Kat Zingano, she made $1,458,000. Against Betch Correa, $2,642,000. And then her two big purses against Holly Holm. I'm not 100% certain on this one, because her description matches Conor McGregor. So one of these numbers is Conor's, one's hers, but she either made $4,476,000 or $4,536,000. And Amanda Nunes made $4,879,000. Wow.
Okay, can I keep going?
Yeah, go again.
Conor McGregor.
Well, Conor again, and I'm going to go first that Topol document. He said for McGregor, and this was only covered up to the second Diaz fight, this description here, Conor McGregor was compensated nearly $20 million for participating in 9 UFC bouts, which he won 8. So that covers everything up to the second Diaz fight. But when the numbers of purses, that includes the rest of 2016. So we have the Eddie Alvarez purse. So looking at Conor McGregor, it was hard to determine, because you have so many purses when you get to the bottom end that there's multiple fighters that have the same description. But I'm going to go with his headlining pay-per-view events, starting with Chad Mendes. Against Chad Mendes, he made $2,642,000. That included a $2.11 million discretionary bonus. Against Jose Aldo, he got, again, like I said with the Ronda Rousey, he either got 4,470,000, sorry, or 4,536,000. So one or the pretty basically 4.5 million. Against the first Diaz fight, he made $5,576,000. Diaz in that fight got 2.838 million. The second Diaz fight, McGregor got 5.615 million, and Nate Diaz got 4.315. And then finally against Eddie Alvarez, he got $6,812,000 against Eddie Alvarez. Now, we also know a couple of the event revenues. Against one of the Diaz fights, the event generated 61 million. I'm not sure which one, but it generated 61 million. The Eddie Alvarez fight generated $66 million. So for two events that generated $125 million, $127 million, Conor McGregor basically got about $12 million.
Man. How about Nate Diaz? Can we hear about him?
Well, I just said him.
Do we have any other?
Well, again, that's the problem is before he took on McGregor, a lot of his purses were in the 60, 70, $80,000 range.
That's what I want to hear. Yep. That's what I want to hear. I want to know exactly.
Well, it's going to take me a while to go through and figure out which one's exactly his.
Oh, okay.
So it's because you get buried and there's so many numbers, similar numbers. It's so much easier to pick out the stars.
Okay. How about Brock Lesnar?
Brock is interesting because not only is he listed here, but we actually knew his numbers before because they had listed in the antitrust lawsuit against Alistair Overeem. He got $3 million. And then in part of the Hunt lawsuit, they disclosed that he made $8 million for that fight, and it matches up exactly what's in the list in the purses here for the suit. So that's the only two fights he had during the class period.
Okay. John Jones.
John Jones, we got, we go through him against Rashad Evans, the first one that's in that period, $2.278 million.
Wow. Way back then he was making that much?
Yep. And then against, you got to remember, though, that fight sold, I can't remember, like 700,000 pay-per-view buys, and several million gate. To me, that's not a lot.
Yeah.
Vitor Belfort, he got 1.56 million, 1.566. According to against Chael Sonnen, 2.750. Looks like he got a flat fee. Chael looks like he got $1,050,000 for that fight.
What about Chael?
I just said Chael for that fight got $1,050,000.
Oh, see, I don't know who you're saying. You just saying he got. So I'm thinking you're saying that John got that. No.
Yeah, John got against Chael Sonnen $2.750 million, which is it looks like it was a flat guarantee fee because otherwise it'd be an odd number for the pay-per-view. Okay. And Chael Sonnen got $1,050,000, so he got his $50,000 that for that fight. He had a $50,000 purse, so they gave him basically $1 million, and I'm sure it was a bonus, discretionary bonus. Against Gustafsson, John Jones supposedly got $1.173 million. Against Glover Teixeira, he got $1.237 million. Against DC, he got $3.637 million. In DC for that fight, got $1.14 million. And OSP, John Jones got $2.677 million.
What about for the second DC fight?
That's where the class period ends, right before then, so we don't have that number. Okay. But basically, John Jones was on the same contract that he was for the first DC fight. Okay. So it's very likely that he made almost identical on the second one because the pay-per-view numbers are supposed to be about the same.
Oh, I got two more names. First one. Okay. Anderson Silva, because, Anderson Silva money. So I want to know what Anderson Silva money is.
Well, for Anderson Silva, this is kind of interesting. This is before Chris Weidman. He was obviously on a different contract. Against Vitor Belfort and Chael Sonnen, who had these big, huge fights in the U.S. And again, Chael Sonnen got the identical amount for this fight as he get against John Jones, $1,050,000. His $50,000 show pace and a $1 million bonus. But Vitor Belfort and Chael Sonnen, he got basically the same amount of money, $2.5 million for each of them, give or take because of the pay-per-views, right? But when he fought in Brazil at that time against Okami and Bonner, he got a $2 million flat fee. at that time. Now, after that, his purse went up tremendously on the Weidman fight. The first Weidman fight, he got 3.2 million. The second Weidman fight that supposedly sold about 1 million in pay-per-views, he got 4.374 million. And then the Nate Diaz fight, 3.429 against Bisping, 3.250. It looks like a flat fee again. And then DC at UFC 200, he got 4.208.
And for you listeners, he meant to say Nick Diaz, not Nate Diaz. Anderson
No,
Silva.
everybody knows Nate went up and fought Anderson Silva.
All right, my last one, GSP.
Okay, well, GSP didn't fight as much, but he fought several times. And it's interesting, his Jake Shields fight was, I think, his highest purse, yes, that we have listed. For Jake Shields, he got 4.3 million, what we could calculate. I think Jake Shields, I have to double check. I think Jake got 580,000 for that fight at the Toronto Dome. Against Carlos Condit, it's 3.197. Against Nick Diaz and GSP got 4.116 million. And against Johnny Hendricks, 3.555 million.
Man, I just figured that they would be making a little lower. I don't know why.
Oh, really? See, to me, I'm the opposite, because not the opposite. I expect this is actually lower than what I thought they'd be, because
really,
yeah, because I mean, these are for like the Conor McGregor fights, are 50, 60 million being generated, and he's getting like 10% of the revenue. For same with GSP, these are events that are selling. I think Nate Diaz probably sold over 900,000 pay-per-views. So you're thinking with the gate and everything, they're generating between $30-35 million, and he's getting like 13-14% of the revenue. I mean, that's just in tremendous profits for the UFC. I mean, for a lot of these bouts, the gate covers their purses, and the pay-per-view, the UFC keeps all the pay-per-view money, basically.
Yeah. But I still, with as chintzy as the UFC is, and as tight with their money that they are, and the way that they do the fighters, I am genuinely shocked that it was in this ballpark. Not saying that they don't deserve it. I think they deserve a lot more, especially since we've been doing this.
Well, that's probably, but you got to remember too, way to look at it is these are the biggest stars, the headline A side.
Right.
In a lot of the cases, the B side guy is getting their flat B, and they're not. I mean, go back years ago, Gray Maynard he fought at Frankie Edgar on his contract was 26 and 26,000. He got 26,000, and then they gave him an extra $100,000 bonus on a pay-per-view for a title fight, which, people are like, oh, he made 126,000. Isn't that great? Not really. You're headlining a pay-per-view.
Yeah. Ugh. But that also is a testament to the way that they do the smaller weight fighters too.
Oh, exactly. But
back then, before Conor McGregor and everything else, this is how they did those smaller weight fighters.
A lot of them got much lower. They still get much lower pay. A lot of the guy that's the B side in the title fight is not making a lot of money. They're just, now they're getting a little bit more, they get a flat, but you look at a lot of the fights, it's, even the heavyweights, they're not, the B side challengers not making a tremendous amount of money. I mean, the one thing in the UFC, the longevity does obviously pay more, because the longer you're in the promotion, the higher your wages are. But I don't know. I'm not against it. I'd like guys making a ton of money and get out, because you see guys with 25, 26, 27 fights in the UFC, and they're like, well, now you're making good money. Yeah, but that's a lot of brain damage to get to that point.
Sure is.
I'm not big for the big to be hanging around. But anyway, I should point out, we're gonna go through this. We'll analyze all the numbers. We'll come up with. I'll see what I can track down other fighters. Try to go down the fighters more lower down the tier than the big stars. We can find out the median stuff like that. But it's just a tremendous amount of information, actually, that I was kind of floored to see. The numbers themselves don't include the name of the fighter, but it's pretty easy to tell which fighter is which, because you can cross-reference the other data on it and say, well, only one fighter meets that description.
Now, what about this? Did you happen to notice what the lowest pay was? I don't expect you to know who it was. I just want the number. Well,
the lowest pay, and this was I found kind of interesting. I mean, every year the lowest pay is basically a guy on the minimum UFC minimum at that time. Mm-hmm. So like 6, 8, 10, 12,000. I think the first year with the minimum in 2011, I believe was 8-8 at the time. And then it went up. But that's not the minimum. Actually, yeah, it was 8-8, or no, they just started 10-10, I think, that year. So there's a lot of fighters still on 8-8 and a few fighters on 6-6. And I have to look back and figure out who this is. But in 2012, they had a fighter who came back who had several fights in the UFC, and he was on a $4,000. He got $4,000 to fight. and I don't know who it is or what. Obviously, he was a guy that came back from an old contract, right? But I'm not sure who that is. But I found that, that someone who had signed with the UFC years earlier to come back and was still fighting on this $4,000 contract. And I think it was like his third fight in the UFC.
Wow.
Yeah,
I want to know who that is. That was just making 4,000.
Yeah, we'll have to look through it. It's just someone we know that it was someone that obviously signed with the UFC, had been fighting earlier for them and then took a pause, but I'm not sure who it is. Actually, it was in 2011 he fought, but it was his third fight, and they got $4,000, which means also they lost the fight.
Oh, because they didn't
get a bonus unless they were on a 2-2 contract.
Lord.
But I very much doubt that. I don't think the UFC had those for a while. So that'll be my mission, to figure out who that guy is. Maybe if someone hears it out there, knows it, let me know, and that way I don't have to dig through all this data and try to figure out who that is.
Yeah, I would really like to know that myself. What else you got? Anything else in there that we should know about on this late Wednesday night?
Well, I mean, we're going through a bunch of the documents and stuff right now, and there's some other interesting information on like the contracts and stuff. And we had a negotiation period with Lyoto Machida that in 2018, I think Steve Morocco even tweeted this, that he got $1 million fight from Bellator.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some, like I said, we have some event information that the highest paying event during the class period, for money generated, was 66 million, and we can pretty much tell what period it covered that was UFC 205. Going through too, you can go through and calculate, because multiple fighters had pay-per-views of that fight, and you add it up, and basically the event made $26 million, and they had 4 people on it that got pay-per-views, right? Mm-hmm. 4 champions, and total payout was about 25% of the revenue.
What?
Yeah, so
that hurt their feelings to do that.
It probably did. It was higher than normal, but as a pay-per-view, you're still, if you're paying 15, 16, 17 million to the fighters, and then your other expenses, and people got to remember, the other expenses are not as high as a lot of people say they are. They're millions, but not like 50%. The other expenses were probably like, maximum $6, $7, $8 million. So you're talking about 50 to 60% margins on that one event.
Good Lord. That is insane. So that event, UFC 205, that was Conor and Eddie, right?
Yep, Conor and Eddie with the Tyrone Woodley and Wonder Boy as the co-main, and then Joanna Champion versus, I cannot recall. She beat the crud out of someone who in the third fight. I am drawing a blank on that.
Hang on. I want to say it was Michelle Watterson, but it might not have been.
It might. I don't think it was. It was. I think it was Carolina Kowalkiewicz.
Oh,
Kowalkiewicz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who's But anyways, it was. Yeah. But Joanna did well in that fight.
Hey, do we have any numbers for Joanna yet? Or
no, I haven't. I haven't gone through enough to separate all hers. But I think for this, I don't have it written down in front of me. But I think for this event, it was over. She made over for 205. I think she made over 2 million. I think we're guessing. So
good job. Wow.
Yeah. So
I would definitely like to know more about the women's salaries.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a few of them did well in pay-per-view and stuff, especially when they're fighting with Ronda Rousey and stuff, and they got points. So like Holly Holm against Miesha Tate did very well. And I have to check what Miesha Tate, if she got paid. I don't even know if she had pay-per-view points. I think she did against Nunez, and then Nunez did well against Ronda Rousey. So all of them did well in those bouts, but not generally. A lot of the champions, when they're on the smaller cards and stuff, they don't seem to be making a lot. And same with like what's his name? Mighty Mouse is not making a fortune.
I'd also like to know what the guys that came over from Pride made, like Hendo.
They seem to be doing the best. There's
Rampage.
Pride fighters, that are not champions. Like back in 2011, I think Vanderlei looks like, and I could be mistaken. I could be talking. This could be Big Nog or something instead. But I think Vanderlei was making like $1 million a fight, which was very good for that time period for everybody else. So it's the Pride guys, and then Shogun Hua too was for against Jones. I think he made over $1 million, but they had pay-per-view and stuff. But still, the Pride guys seem to be, for the sales and stuff, seem to be doing much better than everybody else.
And I'm also very interested in exactly what the UFC was paying Hector Lombard, because remember, he was making $400,000 a fight in Bellator, and Bellator couldn't wait to unload him. So,
I do not know. I haven't looked up. I haven't tried to figure out what his fights were and stuff, so I'll have to go through again. But I imagine he did pretty. And there's a lot of fighters that did well. There's about, you'll see guys making $300,000, $400,000, $700,000. There's a bunch of guys like that. So there's a lot of fights in the fight business. You would say, I think, you'd say that guy did reasonably well. I think Jeremy Stevens, I don't know what, 2016 or something. Yeah, 2016. I think it's him. He made $400,000 for his fight that year. Jeez. Which I think for a lot of people, they'd be kind of surprised that he made that much. Frank Mir, I think, did $700,000 that year for his fight. So, but he'd been around forever and a former champion. But, at that point, he was well past his prime. So, I don't know what should we expect from him. I think this is Joanna Champion's purse for UFC 205. I think she made $2.377 million.
That's pretty decent.
Oh yeah, it's very good. I mean, like I said, you add them up, and the total purses for all the fighters in that card was probably 15 to 17, 18 million in that ballpark.
Insane. I love that though. I like that somebody was getting paid, but again, we must remind our listeners, only the top people are getting paid like this. Everybody else is getting paid shit.
Well, in some ways, that argues the opposite. They're the top guys drawing. The event did quadruple what a normal event does, right, for the UFC, and yet those fighters got only 25% of the revenue.
Yeah, I do understand that point, but I mean, just people hearing this and hearing me say I wasn't expecting it because, the UFC is very, very tight. It is a bit of a shocker to me to hear that people are making in the multiple millions, even if it is low for them. But then you look at all these little guys that ain't making shit, and, it's a stark reminder. That's all.
Well, yeah, I mean, part of it is when you make that much profit on one event, it's easy to throw around the money to the other guys. I think we talked about this. My comparison before is, in many ways, the bottom guys actually make more in the UFC than they would like a comparable guy in boxing and an outside promotion. So they, the top guys, the actual draws, the big, very top guys who are on a massive event, that if you're on an event, the top 4 fighters, let's say, are getting 1/4 what they would get paid in boxing, in a boxing model, where the bottom 16 guys of a 10 fight card, the bottom 16 guys are getting maybe 4 times as much as they would get compared to a boxer. But when you make very little and you get 4 times as much, yes, it's more. But when you get paid a ton and you get 1/4 as much, the UFC in the end is saving millions and millions of dollars by doing that.
Yeah. Bam. The UFC is just raking it in.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have attorney fees now.
They have a lot of them too, I bet.
And the other thing to consider too, that people think this is going to keep dragging out. It goes on trial. I want to point out April 8th. They're expecting the trial to last 4 to 6 weeks.
It's going to be fast then.
It might even be shorter than that. I think they might say maybe 3 and 4 weeks. I'm not sure. But it is not going to be it's not going to drag on. I was telling this to people earlier. As soon as we get past class cert, things might move very quickly, and no one believed me, but here we are.
I believed you when you would tell me every single episode.
I appreciate it. You're the only person that ever believed me.
We work together. I'm supposed to believe you.
Oh, that's you and your gullible nature. I appreciate that.
So what else do we have here? Anything good?
Well, we have a bunch of other filings coming up, a bunch of other unsealed documents. I have a bunch of there's just so much stuff that got released the other day in exhibits. I haven't gone through it all. We have financial reports that are unredacted now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a lot of the financial information that we've had from these filings, as well as we've got from the TKO and Endeavor going public, all the public filings that revealed concrete information. And on Bloody Elbow, I'll put a post that basically graphs out how much revenue per year the UFC is making, what they pay their fighters per year, what kind of profit they see per year, all those kind of things, so people can just quickly look at it and get all the information without having to scan through 50 different documents.
I do have something I want you to spitball for me. Let's say that this goes to trial and the UFC loses. What happens? What is immediate steps following leaving the courtroom? How much time would they have to pay their damages? Just lay it out a little bit.
Well, if it goes to trial and they lose, the jury then will have to come up with a number, right? Mm-hmm. And then it'll be trebled because they went to trial and they didn't settle. So it can be tripled. So if the jury comes up with the number, if the jury agrees with the plaintiffs that the UFC basically underpaid them by $1 billion, and they'll owe $3 billion. Now they'll appeal it, and depending on the appeal process, it could be dragged out a while before they have to pay.
But when eventually, you say a while, what's a rough estimate of dragged out for a while?
Well, again, it's the court system. So it's how quick does the court get to it? How quick do they accept or reject it? How far does it go? So like this case, other antitrust case. Okay, I'll do an example. The Google, not the Silicon Valley poaching case, right? The high tech company, that monopoly charge case, that was relatively quick. It only took a couple of years. They brought in the evidence. They submitted it for appeal. The judges asked for questions. They kicked it, went to trial within 6 months. So that took only a few years. Where this UFC case is very similar cases dragged on for a decade. So for the appeal process, you think about it, it could very easily be over in a year or whatever. The post judgment could be over, or if appeals get accepted, if they go back to hearings, it could be dragged on for several years.
Yeah.
So it's all up in the air. The question I would have, one thing I have to assume, because the UFC doesn't seem to have made any effort to settle, and has argued that they're not going to. Part of me wonders is that they've been trying to pull this out, because if they unload the company to another entity, or if they sell shares, because it's a public company now, TKO, if they unload their shares, it's not Endeavor, the current owners, that are on the hook for.
It's going to be the shareholders.
The shareholders who bought these stocks at $80 to $100, and then we'll find out they're worth $20 because so much is owed.
Oh my! So that's the fire sale.
That possibly. I mean, I know a lot of people argue, the UFC has insurance for this. I can almost guarantee you they do not have antitrust insurance. That's almost unheard of in business, because no one wants to do. If you do have antitrust, usually it covers the trial, because that's cheap. No one's going to cover, give you a policy that says, we're on the hook, the insurance policy, for billions of dollars for something you did that's technically illegal, right? So that it's almost unheard of. So when people say that, they probably have insurance that's paying for their bills, right, for the suit, but a judgment will probably not be covered by that. So
when you say covers the bills, covers the suit, are you talking just like attorney's fees?
Attorney fees, stuff like that.
Okay.
Those things might be covered. They might have insurance for that. They might not. They just might have a fund they put aside, because look at their reports that they file. They seem to be paying attorney fees, and they've gone up at certain times. So you got to guess that might be these attorney fees for this case. But I'm just saying that people that think that the UFC, they have an insurance policy, that this won't mean anything to them. Everybody I've talked to that handles antitrust cases and class actions, they say they've never heard of a policy that would cover something like this. So I find it very unlikely that they have a policy that would cover this. But again, if they kick the can down the road and they're just trying to dump it on, right now they say they're not going to do that. But if they're selling shares to other entities or the public, then the Endeavor, the Fertitas no longer on the hook for the bill. They sold the company.
Mm-hmm.
Endeavor, if they unloaded, they have TKO a separate entity. If they unloaded TKO tomorrow, they would not owe a dime on it.
Final question. If they lose this suit, if they lose an appeal, does this break the company?
I mean, I'm not 100% certain. I don't imagine it would damage it. But again, you're paying just damages, right? And the UFC makes a fortune right now. And even though they'd have to pay damages, the damages might compel them to change their business, but it doesn't have to, because there's no injunctive relief as part of this case right now. The injunctive relief has been kicked down to the Johnson v. Zuffa case. That Lee versus Zuffa and Johnson v. Zuffa will move into a injunctive relief phase after this that could take years and years before that gets done. So the UFC now, even if they have to pay damages, they would not have to follow any court order like the remedy of like changing their contracts or behaving differently, right? And on top of that, they have all the current fighters have signed class action waivers. So that has greatly probably shrunk the pool of potential plaintiffs in the next case. So they might have to pay a ton of money, but that might be the end of the problem if the plaintiffs can't get the court to throw out those class action waivers, or they decide they just don't have the energy anymore to go forward with with injunctive relief. So it's interesting too. We should point out, we talk about Ngannou being the big winner, fighting out his contract, going against everybody, getting out of the contract. But one part that hasn't been argued about, Ngannou pointed out, is not only if he will get damages from this leak case because he fought before 2017, but because he left the UFC and didn't re-sign with them, he didn't sign a class action waiver.
Oh.
And so if there's any damages awarded in the future on the second group, he's still eligible, though, unlike all the other fighters that re-signed with the UFC. and on top of it, because he didn't take a pay raise, right, because he didn't sign a contract for more money, his pay looks incredibly low compared for the formula they're using. He's in a title fight on pay-per-view getting $600,000. That's it. So he's probably eligible for more damages than other fighters.
Wow. I'm loving this part. I don't think anybody has taken that into account. And I'm glad you shined a light on it, because holy moly, that's interesting stuff right there.
Well, again, for this case might be decided soon, and he might know, all the fighters might know they're winning damages soon or have a settlement. But for the Johnson case, where he'd be eligible probably for even more damages, that might be, who knows when that gets done.
Well, all right. That about wraps us up here. We'll probably have another episode in the next 10 days, so you guys just keep your eyes peeled. John, what you got coming up? I know you have the thing with Anton. That's going to be this week?
Probably tomorrow.
Oh.
Or today, or whatever. I don't know what day this is coming out. Whatever day this is coming out, the same day or the next day, or maybe even before. Maybe we'll break the time barrier and put it before. Who knows?
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Folks, do us a favor. Subscribe. We need all the help we can get. Always. Help us out.
We need a lot of help, believe me.
And y'all already know the drill. Until next time, please stay safe.
It's not in the face! Thank you.